Hey guys, it's good to be back at it. It's been a little while since I've uploaded. There are reasons, but they're boring, so I won't get into that. But I've got some thrift flips for you today that all happen to be storage items. I've been doing some spring cleaning, so storage and organization is on the brain. It might be something you guys are doing right now too in your homes. I'd love to hear about your spring cleaning or organization projects in the comments. But enough talking, let's get into these vintage farmhouse style thrift flips. So for this first project, I have this ceramic cookie jar, and it's really cute, but it's not really my style, so I'm going to turn it into something else, something that's functional for me. It was very shiny, so I took a sanding block to it to take some of the shine off, but even after sanding it by hand, it was still pretty shiny, so I put some Mod Podge on it so that my paint would adhere to the jar a little bit better. I used the color Hammered Copper, and it's a spray paint by Rustoleum. For a little bit of contrast, I'm going to paint the knob on the cookie jar lid in this gold acrylic paint color. I wanted to make a tag or label as a decorative element on the front of the jar, so I just printed out a template to use for the shape, and the actual material I'm using for the label is actually a copper grilling mat from Walmart, but you could use some cardstock or some faux leather if you have some. Really almost anything would work. And I'm going to paint it gold, the same color gold that I painted the knob so that it will match. I'm going to be using this jar for dog treats for our dog to set in our laundry room. And so I'm just going to use these stamps, and I'm using a straight edge here, just a piece of cardboard to kind of keep me in line. It still didn't turn out perfectly straight, but it's okay. I mean, it's just a jar for dog treats. But so you could use your Cricut or some stencils or whatever, just freehand the word treats or whatever it is that you're putting in the jar. I wanted to make it look like this label was nailed onto the container, and so to make some faux nail heads, I just took these brads, 2 of them, and using some wire cutters, cut off the little part on the back that holds paper, and then I'll just take my pliers and sort of push any leftover part on the brad that might be sticking out, preventing it from being flush up against the container. Just pushing that down in the back and then gluing them on with some E6000. This Hammer Copper spray paint looks pretty nice, but I thought that some antique wax would give it a little bit more dimension. And the shine on these brad heads it was just a little too shiny, so I took some Rub and Buff and put a little bit on there to take that shine down. I have this toolbox that I got from Goodwill for $2.99, and I use it every time I craft. I have my main tools in it that I use for crafting, and it's not the prettiest thing. I'm not crazy about the color, so I just wanted to make it nicer looking because it does sit in my laundry room. I don't have a craft room, and so my supplies just kind of like have places throughout my house. And so I wanted to make this look a little bit better, even though what's in it is quite messy and will probably stay that way. I wanted to make the toolbox itself fit my style just a little bit better. So to start off, I'm just going to use up some of this older plaster chalk paint that I had that needed to be used. It was getting a little too thick. I even had to add water to it just as my first coat. And then I went over it with 2 coats of the Ivory chalk paint by Waverly. This handle was just a galvanized rod. I'm pretty sure this thing was homemade, and it has a great look to it. I love the style of it, but the galvanized just doesn't really, I don't have many galvanized things in my home, but I love copper and antique brass, and so I just chose this acrylic. I think it's like an antique copper color that I got from Walmart. And then in the bottom, I knew that this thing is gonna get scuffed up. It looked really nice once I got it all painted. Looked nice and clean and new. But I knew because of what I was going to be using this toolbox for, it was going to get scuffed up and I might as well go ahead and distress it. But so after I did the dishwasher Mod Podge in the bottom because I knew it would get the most abuse in the bottom on the inside. And then for the rest of the toolbox, I did the regular matte Mod Podge to seal the paint in and to protect it from getting too scuffed. And then I went ahead and did, although I should have done this before the Mod Podge, went ahead and did some antique wax. Actually, I think I did do the antique wax before I did the matte Mod Podge on the rest of it. So I did do that right. But to add a little bit more character to this box, I wanted to add something else to it. I found this old, where did I get this from? I think I got it from the Graphics Fairy. I'll leave it in the bottom. No, actually this time I don't think it was the Graphics Fairy. I'll leave the link in the bottom in the description box to where I got this printable from. It's an old business card actually, and it has, it's to a dairy. And I'm just going to Mod Podge that on the side. I printed it out on tissue paper, and how I did that was I just used painter's tape and taped some tissue paper to some cardstock and ran that through my printer. And now just using a thin coat of matte Mod Podge, I'm going to Mod Podge that to each end. I printed out 2 of them. Once I had the image Mod Podged onto the ends, I realized that there was too harsh of a difference between the color of my printout and the Ivory chalk paint. So I'm just going to take some of that Ivory chalk paint and go around the edges and really go around the whole thing and just sort of try to blend in this this printout that I Mod Podged. Just blend it into the rest of the piece. It does lighten up the text, but that's okay. It just made it look more aged, and I really like how it turned out. You can just see there the before and the after, how it really did blend it in, going over with some of the background color there. And then once I got that done so that the ends matched the rest of it, I just went ahead and aged it a little bit more with some antique wax. And I almost hate to put my ugly tools back into this box. I let it sit around my house for a couple of days and just looked at it because I really love how it turned out. But then I eventually put all my ugly tools back into it and I've been using it and it's working out great. You might already have a couple of these laying around up in a closet or in the attic. It's just a couple of popcorn tins, a larger one and a smaller one. I got these from a yard sale. They were very, very cheap. I can't remember the price. But I'm just going to give them a base coat of some Paint Plus primer. It's just what I had in white. I did run a sanding block over these, I forgot to mention, before I painted them. I try to do that with everything I paint, if I can, if it won't mess up the finish. But I have this contact paper from the Dollar Tree, just one roll of it, and I'm going to apply it to each of these cans. Now, if you do this same thing, the same technique, learn a lesson from my mistake. And where the lid goes over the tin at the top, don't put contact paper there. Like, let it stop short where the lid is going, the edge of the lid is going to cover it. Because once I got this covered in both the contact paper and the tissue paper that I'm going to put on it, it made the lid have quite a tight fit, and I have to push down kind of hard on it, which it works fine. But if I could go back in time, I would not put the contact paper underneath where the lid goes down. I have this craft tissue paper and I got it off of Amazon. I know that there is a pack of tissue paper at the Dollar Tree that does have a sheet or two of brown tissue paper in it. I've bought that a couple of times. They usually keep that in stock, even at the worst Dollar Trees. So I'm just going to Mod Podge that over this contact paper. The contact paper is beautiful and it looks fine without it. You do not have to do this step, but I like for things to look old or vintage. It just matches my decor and my house, but you do, whatever matches your style, and you can cover it in whatever contact paper you might find, even at Walmart or other stores. With the larger tin, I used Mod Podge, and whenever I'm Mod Podging tissue paper, I don't care about wrinkles, and occasionally it'll even tear, but then you can just go and patch it back. If you're going for a vintage vibe, if there's a couple little mistakes on it, it just matches the piece. But for the second tin, I tried out this spray adhesive that I got from Walmart. There's the SKU number, so you can find it if you'd like. And this stuff actually worked a lot better. For some things, Mod Podge works great, and then, for some things, the glue stick works better. It just depends on what your project is and, what you're doing. But the spray adhesive, I would definitely recommend for this particular project. It worked out really well for this, and the tissue paper turned out really smooth on this smaller can. I won't make you watch me cover the entire both of these lids, but I just wanted to show how I did each one. I just tried to make the circle a little bit smaller than the top of the lid, and then I used the spray adhesive on both of the lids because at this point I figured out that it worked much better than the Mod Podge for this project. For this other one, it had a groove in the lid, in the top of the lid, and so just using a piece of paper, I created a template for myself, cut that out so that I would be able to cut out a good, nice fitting circle of the craft paper. And I'm just showing you here on the sides of the lids, I just went ahead and just accepted that there was going to be folds. You could cut slits all the way around and do that, but you're going to have some overlapping, whether it's folded over or just overlapped from your cuts. It was just the way it was going to be. And then whenever I got done Mod Podging the top and the sides, I had that excess and I went ahead and burnt that away, and it worked okay, but I think using a razor blade probably would have worked even better than this technique. Whenever you're using fire in crafting, if you do, always make sure to have water, right next to you, and plenty of it to be able to throw on there in case it gets out of hand. And I would never light anything too big on fire. But I also had my front door open. Where I was crafting was right next to my front door at my table. And so I was prepared to just chuck everything out the door if I needed to, if it, caught on fire. And I had it standing up on top of a bottle here. I don't have it, on fire directly on the cardboard there. It just looks like it from this angle. But for this, I would probably just use the razor blade because I had to clean up those edges, after it burned. I had to clean it up. I had a good bit of cleanup to do. But I'm just showing you here that where I didn't have enough paper to go down over the side of this lid, I just patched. And anywhere where the tissue paper came up short or I missed a spot or whatever, I just patched it, as well as the bottom, along the bottom rim there. I just took a long strip and Mod Podged that on there, and it looked totally fine doing that. Where I used Mod Podge on one tin and then the spray adhesive on the other, it did make a color difference. You can see that the Mod Podged one looks darker, the flowers look darker, and the one with the spray adhesive looks a little bit lighter. Looks more like a dark gray than a black flower. So I just wanted to show you that if you do two different, what would that be called, a medium, for adhering your tissue paper on there, it might affect the color, but they still match, enough. The smaller one looks a little bit lighter, but I did go over both of them with a coat of Mod Podge over the top as well, just to seal that in. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new, consider subscribing so you don't miss any new content I put out. Hope you have a wonderful day. See you guys in the next one.